Hey Facebook friends, this is Marianne here, and this is actually a direct reply to one of my followers on my YouTube page, Boltonlad18. I wanted to reach out to you because she asked me about the rise of misandry. For those of you that don't know what that word means, that basically is the reverse of misogyny, people that have a sexism against men. And he asked whether or not, what my thoughts were on the rise of that. I wanted to go through a few things to just talk about that. First of all, I'm a daddy's girl. I grew up having a wonderful relationship with my father. I know not everyone has that. So I actually don't have really any hatred toward men. Now, well, I'm putting that out forward because I grew up in a household where I had an incredible examples of what strong men are. And if you can take a look at something that I actually posted a while back for a Global Woman magazine, they had just launched Global Man magazine and had me speak in London about this last year. And I was pointing out that I actually have no issue with the alpha male. Let me clarify that. The real alpha male. To me, the real alpha male does not need to put anyone down because they are so confident in who they are, their own success, their own intelligence, their own knowledge base, that they don't need to do that. A real alpha male is so strong and competent that someone else's strength and competence is something they embrace because they're so intelligent and strategic enough that they can recognize that if they have a team player that happens to be more intelligent, or more strategic, or more knowledgeable in some other area, that they want to embrace that and make that part of their arsenal so that it lifts them up and they can do even more. Now, that's one of the key things that my father, who was an ultimate alpha by all major definitions, he was the CEO of 7-Eleven, CEO for a while of Citgo, CEO of Ticketmaster, he had a fleet of planes, he did all the things that everyone thinks today are alpha males. Now, one of the things he did do, though, that I don't see a lot of people do, is that he always talked to me about that the person at the top has to recognize they are completely dependent on everybody else that helped lift them at the top. So therefore, they have to be in service to the whole. Now, to me, that is a positive alpha male. The negative alpha male, I think I could also use the term pseudo-alpha, is someone that is faking being that powerful. A person that's faking is having to put everybody else down because they really aren't that confident. Therefore, they have to say that you're not that intelligent, you're not that strong, I'm the smartest. You know what? The smartest person in the room doesn't want to be the smartest person in the room because they want people that can, include in whatever their plans are so that they can lift everybody up further. The strongest person in the room, the true alpha in the room, they want to make leaders because if they have a team of leaders, then everybody is leading even further, even higher. So that's the difference. So when I talk about a positive alpha or a negative alpha, that's the difference between them. And I'm sharing that because when people are talking about misandry today, what's happening is we see with these incels and other things, or you see those issues with those quiverful groups that have infiltrated different churches, calling themselves prayer groups that are really trying to teach misogyny. That's coming from a place of fear. That's coming from a place where men are really terrified that women are becoming so much more independent that they don't need men economically. Well, I would actually say this is a good thing for men because that means if a woman who is absolutely confident and doesn't need you economically to pay her bills, but she still wants to be with you, that means she wants you, not your money, not what you can get her, not for the ring you can put on her finger, not for the place that you can take her out to dinner, not for the adventures that you can include her on. She wants you because she loves your heart and your mind and your soul and feels like the two of you can grow together and get the best out of each other. That is the kind of woman you want. Because otherwise, if you want a woman that feels tied to you because she needs that economic help, guess what? The minute you hit a rough spot, she's out the door. She doesn't really love you. So why would you even want a woman to be tied to you for that? You want someone who wants you for everything that you really are. So that if you get sick, you want her wanting to stand by your side to help you up. If for some reason you get hurt and you can't make a living and you've got kids to feed, you want someone that can get out the door and make a living so that she can put food on the table so that you are okay and you can heal up and get back out the door. Those are things that really do happen in everyday life. Right now within the Misandry Institute, one of the programs that we have is Food Source DFW, now Food Source USA, and we feed a minimum of 5,000 families a day in Dallas. And you know why? Because there's so many stories that people are unaware of. For example, there's a family that, both parents are lawyers, both of them make really big salaries, and they were the type of family that had their Lexus or their Mercedes, and they took 2 different vacations every year. But they had one child who within 1 month racked up some unbelievable 6-figure amount of money because they need to spend that to save that child's life. They have been trying to doggy paddle with their heads here financially ever since, and you wouldn't look at them and think that they would need to come through and get groceries, but they do. And the reason they need that is because they're juggling like so many other people, trying to handle, the mortgage or the rent, with health care costs, with food. And the only way they can make everything work and take care of all that incredible health care costs, which of course they're going to do because they love their child, is if both of them are working. So, this is the reality in our world right now. So I don't think that this is something that men should fear. In fact, I think this is a beautiful thing because it means, like I said, that you're going to find a capable woman who can help you with the burden of financial stability and that loves you for you. So putting that aside, let go of the fear of that. Now, going back into the darker side of things, I'm 47 years old. I grew up in a world where you understood that it was just going to be accepted that some men were going to slap you on the behind, grab your ass, rope. I don't know a single woman that hasn't been either molested, raped, accosted, run from a gang rape, any of that. I've never been raped. I have been molested. I'm going to be very open here. I've been molested by men and by one woman. So I also don't think that women are automatically more pure or good. I've known a whole lot of, let's just say it's the B word, a lot of not so great women too in my life. I think that people are equally potentially good, equally potentially bad. So I'm not one of these people that believes that women ruled the world, everything would get better. However, I will say this, the facts are the facts. When Sustainable Development Goals were developed, they did research and they discovered, meaning the United Nations, all the different countries that are part of the UN, they discovered that when women make money or the equivalent of it, whether they're in a tribe in the middle of the Amazon or whether they're up there in Manhattan at the stock exchange or, in Japan, in Russia, it doesn't matter where they are, that anywhere from 60 to 70% of what they make in their lifetime ends up being given to what they perceive as their community. So whereas men, they basically keep it. Most of them keep it. So now that doesn't mean that we women are off scot-free because we raise both. So what are we doing or saying when we raise our sons that are making them more self-focused and hoarding? And what are we doing when we're raising our girls that are making them more aware of, let me help the whole community? So that burden is on the entire community. We all need to be thinking that way and not just the women. So, maybe we have had thousands of years in which we've evolved that way, but now for the first time, our species can be conscious of trying to take on the responsibility of changing the direction so we can all feel more responsible and embracive of each other. Now, in terms of what men may be feeling, I understand you. I feel you. I know that you've been given a hard time because it's in your biology. You notice a sexy woman walk by and your wife gets all angry. I happen to be a bi woman, so my husband has the luxury of not having to deal with that. If he notices a sexy woman, guess what? I'm noticing her too. He's got it's a free pass. But because I'm a bi woman, I also understand the biology of it. And I do think that women need to be more understanding that there's a difference between, oh, she was hot, versus going out and trying to have an affair, And so I think that there needs to be more understanding. And I know my saying that will probably tick off some of the women. But when we start talking about in the workplace, I've been in situations where I've had an idea and I put it out there and I say, I think A plus B equals C. And people are, whatever. And a few minutes later, a man says, I think A plus B equals C. And it goes, brilliant. And that doesn't feel good. Now, that's one of the more recent things. Now, if we go back further in history, you notice I'm wearing this piece. This is a gift that the Maori people gave me, and it's from a whale tooth, and it's because of work that we did in which we were helping to bring back these flutes. And these beautiful flutes, they were carved out of bone. They were something that the Maori used when women gave birth, and it was believed that it reduced the pain of childbirth. When the British invaded New Zealand, though, they had a very literal interpretation of the Bible, which said that because Eve ate the apple, women were supposed to have have as much pain as possible during childbirth to pay for that sin of eating a bite of an apple. So therefore, they committed a genocide of all of, the midwives, and the flute carvers, and the musicians who could play the flutes, and they destroyed all the flutes. So, the reason why I share this, now we did do some work. We found some flutes in the Manil. The technology was reintroduced to the Maori, and thanks to Chief Whangatua Black, it's being used in hospitals now in New Zealand. Something the Misandry Institute is really proud of having to get to play a role in. But the reason why I share that is that gives you a little tiny idea of the kind of stuff women have dealt with for centuries. And we can go back throughout history and we can see women burned at the stake. We can see women tied, and seen if they drowned, oops, they were a good person. If they somehow knew how to swim, oh, well, then we better set them on fire. They're a witch. We see women who are demonized for having a brain, for achieving. We see histories in which women have had their, to write men's names on their documents to be taken seriously, and all the way up to, well, my generation, where we just accepted certain things. Now, the generation after me, the millennials, and even beyond that, when you get into the Zoomers, women are not accepting the things that my generation accepted, and I actually think that's a very healthy thing. My husband was mentioning the other day a quote. He didn't invent it, I didn't invent it, I don't know who came up with it, but it was basically saying that if somebody has experienced privilege through their whole lifetime and suddenly they're experiencing equality, it can feel like oppression. And I think that's something that some of the men are feeling right now. So if you're a man and you're going, why are we being hated? Why am I being given a hard time? It might be because you're used to seeing a free pass, or maybe not in your generation, maybe you saw the elders in your family got a free pass of being able to, slap a woman on the ass when she walked by and not have to think about it, automatically be given more money for doing the same amount of work or the same quality of work because you're a man. Maybe, it was because your voice was taken more seriously just because it was a man's voice, and suddenly you're seeing a generation that's going, we're not doing that. And they call you on it and they won't put up with it. And I actually admire the younger generation for doing that. Now, I do think we need a balance. I do think that sometimes people jump too far and say, how dare you? Like I said, with the man who just happens to notice biology that a gorgeous woman walked by. But, I think that when we talk about misandry, as women, we do need to be more sensitive to understanding that the new generation of men are trying to learn and figure out what does it mean to be a man today. And that's an answer that really men have to answer for themselves. But this is exciting because you know what this means? You get to determine what the future of the male part of the race is going to be. You have an opportunity to define what being a positive alpha male in this era of time can be. Can you really think about that? Really sit with that, what the potential of that is? That is going to determine basically maybe 48% of the human race. I know there are more women than men. But that point is that you get to have an opportunity to really challenge the status quo. And I would suggest to you, don't try and go backwards to the 1950s because women aren't going to go back there. We've been there. We've heard the horror stories from our grandmothers. We don't want to go back there. We're not going to go back there. We see things like what Steve Bannon did with the so-called Make Families Great Again over in Hungary with Viktor Orban. We don't want that to happen in America. We see the scary things that are happening with the bounty hunting laws, where if a 12-year-old gets raped and she needs to get rid of the baby, she has to go outside the state to take care of it, or a woman has a baby and suddenly its tumors have killed it, and those tumors could go into the rest of her body. It's not taken out, but in the state of Texas, they're forced to keep it in there, and it could potentially kill her like a ticking time bomb, and she has to go out of the state to take it out, and they want to send a bounty hunter to bring her back and throw her in jail. That stuff is insane, and that is what some of the women are also really responding to, and we're really scared when we see our legislators, male legislators especially, are pushing for that. So what you're also seeing is a huge hodgepodge of issues. Then we feel a wave of what we perceive as an attempt to really curtail our human rights, our quality of life, our access to health care, our ability to move forward in our lives and support our families in every way that we can. So when you feel attacked, what you're also feeling is kind of like a sunburn. If someone's been burnt so much and you actually, they're like, ah! Yeah, and I think that's what's happening with some of the women. So in the past, a slap on the ass might have gotten you a dirty look. Today, with all of this horrible history coming down and people trying to re-grasp and bring back some of those horrible past laws and bring back an era of 1950s, 1960s, it's made women like a, like a sociological sunburn. We're going, oh hell no, oh hell no. And that's what you're also getting. So I don't think it's a hatred toward men, although I do know that a lot of people are talking about the bear versus man in the woods. And I've thought about that as a woman who's been in a situation where I've had to run away from an attempted gang rape, as a woman that's been molested by men, as a woman that's had 3 different kidnap attempts, as a woman who's, just like every other woman had these kind of basic experiences, which is modern day womanhood, you get kind of resentful. You really do. I mean, the other day, I was taking a walk and this creepy guy just thought it'd be fun to come over and leer every time I turned around. He was right there. But here's the other side. The way I handled that, there are really good men that I walked up to and I said, hey, this creepy guy is bothering me. Can you pretend to know me for a bit? And they did. Those were really good men. And those were 4 good men that did that for me and 1 creepy guy. So I think it's important for women to also keep a good balanced idea that there are really creepy guys out there, but there are really good guys too. And we need to have an objective look at this as society, as a species, as a whole. So I'm sensitive when you say that, you worry about the rise in misandry. I understand that, but I think that people tend to bring the pendulum way far back in response. And you have a lot of women coming from a deep place of pain, of fear. Right now, I'm working on the man camp issue of the fact that there are, wherever you see oil setups, they're temporary camps where men have, all men camps to basically set up, looking for the oil. And wherever they're set up, guess what? There's a huge amount of rise in terms of the number of women who are murdered and raped. Well, if there are women camps, quite frankly, you probably wouldn't hear about a rise in men being murdered and raped. And that's just the facts. So we need to find a way in which our genders can work together and live together, in which half of the human race, women, don't have to be in fear. And as long as so many women will be in fear, there's going to be some resentment. And men need to understand that because of that long history, we're going to have you guys come out and reach out and understand we're coming from a place of pain. There's almost a PTSD, if you will, among the whole female gender. So that's what you're dealing with. So I would suggest to you, there's not a rise in hatred toward men, there's a rise in speaking openly about this. But I would also suggest to women that we need to understand how this is making men feel, and we need to have an honest conversation that aren't attacking the other. So I hope this answers your questions at least a little bit and brings some of the things out into front. So lots of love to you, and I hope that in your process of trying to find positive relationships with women, you'll do what I've done about men in terms of really reflecting, being honest with myself. I've had many more positive relationships with men than I've had negative relationships. So based on that, I'm not going to fear all men. I will be smart about it, but I'm not going to fear all men. And I hope that you will get to a place where you won't feel attacked by all women. Thank you.